Did you ask for a sign? Then here it is. Give your problems to God. This is a moment to surrender, not to react. Enough of trying to fix everything with your own strength. Enough of draining yourself over things only God can transform. The advice was given centuries ago. It's right there in the Word. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and even slower to anger. James 1:19, simple? Yes. But if you've ever lived through it, you know. It's easier to climb a mountain than to hold your tongue. And maybe that's exactly why your life feels so turbulent right now. Because it's not just what's happening on the outside, it's what's being tested on the inside. You're not just dealing with people, problems, or external challenges. You're dealing with yourself. You're being tested in silence, in your ability to control your reactions, in your strength to not return insult for insult. You're being refined in emotional maturity. A lot of people think strength is about snapping back fast. They think silence means weakness. But here's the truth. The one who stays silent when they could scream is someone who rules over themselves. And whoever can rule over themselves can rule over any situation. If you raise your voice, you lose your ground. If you answer without thinking, you sabotage your own authority. And the enemy of your soul knows this. That's why he's not just trying to irritate you. He wants you to react impulsively. Because as long as you're stuck in your emotions, you're vulnerable. Napoleon Hill wisely said, "The real enemy of the human mind is uncontrolled emotion." And he wasn't just talking about anger. He warned about impulsiveness, that urge to clap back, to prove a point, to fix everything through pressure, pride, and force of will. But let me tell you a spiritual truth no one ever explained to you properly. Not every victory comes by force. Some only come to those who are willing to wait. Maybe right now, you're in one of those unsettling moments, a toxic conversation that drained you, an injustice that threw you off balance, a betrayal that shattered you inside. And in the middle of it all, your instincts scream, "Answer now." Take justice into your own hands. Show them who you are. But right at that moment, a voice from above whispers, "Stand firm. Don't move. I will handle this myself." Have you ever considered that, in this exact moment, as you listen to these words, heaven might be waiting for just one thing from you? Trust. Trust without seeing. Listen without interrupting. Breathe before responding. Pray before deciding. And if you need a rational reason for this, you don't have to look far. Napoleon Hill taught that between a challenge and your reaction, there's a sacred space. And in that space lives the power to choose your response. More than that, that's the space where God steps in. You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to have the last word. You just need peace. And peace, contrary to what most believe, isn't when everything around you is calm. Peace is when you're at war on the outside, but standing in spiritual alignment on the inside. It's knowing you're not fighting alone, even if it looks like no one else is with you. I know it's not easy. There are days when it feels like the entire universe is conspiring to throw you off balance. Everything irritates you. Everything provokes you. Everything seems like a test. But listen closely. Every time you choose to respond with calm, every time you prefer silence over shouting, every time you kneel down instead of raising your voice, you realign yourself spiritually. You step off the battleground of chaos and return to the territory where God operates. There's something many people overlook, but the spiritual world sees clearly. The enemy isn't just trying to upset you. He's trying to displace you. He wants to knock you off course. He wants you to speak too much and then carry the guilt. He wants you to yell and then lose respect. He wants you to lose control, so he can use your mistake as a weapon of accusation against you. But that ends today. Today your eyes are opening. Today you see what's really behind your impulses. If these words are resonating in your soul, declare this out loud. Or write it if you need to. I choose to trust, not react. It may sound simple, but this phrase is more than just words. Spoken in faith, it becomes an invisible sword. It breaks chains. It stops toxic cycles. It disarms spiritual traps. Napoleon Hill wisely said, "The person who masters their own thoughts can turn any adversity into progress." And you can start doing that right now. Breathe. Step away from the noise. Surrender. What is yours will come. But only if you're in the right place internally. Not driven by impulse, but rooted in spirit. Because what delays you isn't the problem itself. It's your reaction to it. And God is already working behind the scenes. But He needs room to move. And sometimes, that room is found in the silence you haven't yet had the courage to create. Staying silent is not weakness. It's maturity. It's knowing that you don't have to prove anything to anyone, because God is strong enough to fight your battle for you. So hold this close to your heart. Don't answer when you're angry. Don't make decisions with a heart on fire. And if you must speak, speak to heal, not to wound. Or, if the moment still isn't right, don't speak at all. Wait. That's real wisdom. And when you start living like this, everything changes. The atmosphere shifts. People notice. And in the unseen realm, something bows. Because someone chosen by God, who chooses silence with discernment, is more feared in the spiritual world than 1,000 loud voices with no direction. Let's talk about something few people notice, but it's behind countless spiritual, emotional, and even financial failures: the rush to react. Because sometimes, the miracle you're waiting for isn't God changing what's around you. It's God transforming what's happening inside you. And that requires an invisible armor, an inner shield that protects you, not from external attacks, but from your own urge to react without thinking. Are you ready for that kind of strength? Then, take a deep breath, stand firm, and come with me. How many times have you been through this? Everything starts falling into place. You begin praying again, you're reconnecting with your faith, your mind is becoming clear, you're making better decisions, and then, out of nowhere, chaos. A senseless argument, a problem that isn't even yours, a sideways comment, a sudden provocation. And the worst part? It all happens right when you were starting to find yourself again. That's no coincidence. That's spiritual resistance. It's the invisible realm sensing that you're realigning and trying to pull you off course the only way it can, by using your own emotions against you. That's why James was so direct. Be slow to anger. He wasn't just preaching patience. He was teaching spiritual strategy. Anger isn't just a feeling. It's a door. And when you open that door carelessly, without awareness, without control, something comes in. And that something can destroy more than you realize. Maybe you haven't seen it yet, but there's a dark design behind impulsiveness. And the enemy's greatest trick is exactly this: making you believe you're justified in reacting. I was just tired. I needed to vent. I had to let it out. I was just being honest. But listen carefully. Not everything that leaves your mouth is liberation. Sometimes it's self-sabotage disguised as honesty. And what does that lead to? Breaches. Spiritual breaches, emotional breaches, relational breaches, openings you don't notice right away, but over time, they pull you further from what was meant to be yours. Napoleon Hill warned clearly, the person who does not master their emotions will be mastered by them. And this mastery is not about suppressing what you feel. It's about knowing the right moment to act with wisdom, instead of reacting out of impulse. Evil doesn't need to be powerful to win. It only needs you to surrender for a few seconds. Have you ever stopped to think how many victories were lost because of a single minute of emotional collapse? How many relationships broken by one rushed word? How many opportunities destroyed by a flash of anger? And here's the most dangerous part. You can be blessed, gifted, talented, But if you don't know how to stay silent at the right moment, you'll keep knowing a lot and achieving very little. It's not just about having potential, it's about having posture. And that posture is revealed in how you respond. Because the spiritual realm doesn't respect noise, it respects self-control. And self-control begins the moment you decide, today, I won't react. Today, I'll trust. Do you want to hear a truth that most people are afraid to face? A truth that doesn't stroke your ego, but sets your soul free? Not every attack deserves a response. Not every provocation requires a defense. Not every war should be fought with words. Some battles are only won with 3 silent weapons: prayer, discernment, and self-control. Do you remember the story of Moses? A faithful man, brave, chosen by God to lead an entire nation to freedom. He saw the promised land, but he never entered it. Do you know why? Because in a moment of anger, in one burst of mismanaged fury, he struck the rock with his own hands, in rage, and that impulsive act kept him from receiving the promise. That moment is in the Bible for a reason. It's not just a historical record, it's a timeless warning. One emotion out of control can cost you everything. God's word is clear. Be angry, but do not sin. Ephesians 4:26. In other words, feeling anger is human, but being ruled by it? That's far too dangerous to be normalized. Here's what almost no one tells you. The enemy is patient. He's in no rush. He won't attack when you're strong. He waits until you're tired. He waits for the day your emotions are raw, your mind is exhausted, your spirit is drained. He waits for that morning you wake up irritated, overwhelmed, disconnected. And then he strikes, subtly, a rude comment, a disguised provocation, a text message with the wrong tone, a conflict at work, a tone of voice that wounds you, a public remark that humiliates you, and if you react, that's it. He doesn't need to do anything else. You start tearing down what you've built. Because the real attack isn't what comes from the outside. It's when you turn against your own destiny by failing to manage what you feel. How many homes have fallen apart because of unhealed wounds? How many friendships crumbled over one rushed response? How many doors slammed shut because someone exploded instead of reflecting? Napoleon Hill warned with wisdom, failure doesn't come from the problem itself, but from how you respond to it. So take a deep breath right now. Give yourself a moment to reflect. Think about the last times you were overtaken by emotion. Now imagine if, in that moment, you had chosen calm, if you had paused, prayed, waited, stayed silent. Can you see how everything might have been different? But this isn't about guilt. This is about freedom. You don't have to be a slave to your emotions. You don't have to keep repeating the same patterns of pain and regret. You can become an emotional and spiritual fortress. But it all begins with a choice. You can keep reacting like you always have, or you can choose, right now, to change the game. If this is confronting you, good. It means there's still something inside you that wants to grow. So write it in the comments with boldness and intention. I choose to grow spiritually. Don't write it to impress anyone. Write it as a commitment, as the beginning of a new chapter. Because this decision could be the turning point between a life of self-sabotage and a future walking straight toward your promise. Napoleon Hill boldly declared, "Persistence begins where emotional control ends." And what did he mean by that? That as long as you're being guided by impulses, by immediate reactions, by emotional outbursts, you're not yet on the path to true achievement. Stability only begins when your mind aligns with your vision, not with the emotion of the moment. And here, it's worth recalling a powerful reflection from Viktor Frankl, a man who endured what few could survive. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom, your wisdom, your destiny. Do you want to change your life? Then stop living on autopilot. Start living in that space. Breathe before you react. Pray before you decide. Listen to God's voice before responding to the world's pressure. The truth is, you don't have to convince anyone of anything. You just need to protect your peace, protect your vision, protect your calling. And that only happens when you understand this crucial principle. Your emotions are not your enemies, but they're also not your masters. Yes, you feel, of course, but you are not obligated to obey those feelings. You can take the lead. You can choose. You can say, I will wait. I will observe. I will pray first. You are bigger than what tries to shake you, bigger than a provoking comment, bigger than unfair criticism, bigger than wounded pride. And if you're here, it's because you've already started to understand that. But now, let's go deeper. Let's reflect together on two spiritual truths that change everything. First, emotional control is a key. It doesn't just avoid conflict, it unlocks miracles. Second, true surrender opens doors that brute force could never move. The promise is still alive. What God spoke is still on schedule. But maybe what's missing isn't more effort. It's silence. Silence with purpose. Silence with faith. Silence that isn't cowardice, but wisdom. Have you noticed this? Some of life's greatest miracles didn't happen in the noise. They weren't born from shouting, pressure, or manipulation. They were born from surrender. Miracles happen when the soul rests, when the mind quiets, when the heart aligns. There's a hidden power in stillness. A power that doesn't make sense to most people, because we live in a world addicted to reaction. A world where the loudest one gets respect. The one who explodes is seen as strong. The one who fires back instantly is called smart. But in the kingdom of God, the logic is different. In the kingdom, those who choose silence are the most dangerous spiritually. Because they've already understood something the impulsive never do. Miracles don't mix with desperation. Miracles align with order. Napoleon Hill once said, and here lies one of the greatest secrets he ever shared. The man who conquers himself is greater than the one who conquers an empire. Now, that might sound like a powerful quote for a book, but living that in real life hurts. Because controlling yourself requires something the world doesn't offer. Faith. Faith to believe that, even in silence, God is listening. Even without fighting, heaven is working. Even without reacting, you're not losing. You're winning in the invisible. And that's the kind of victory no one sees coming. But when it arrives, it changes everything. James didn't say, do not feel. He didn't forbid anger, indignation, or pain. He said, be slow to anger. And that reveals something profound. The problem is not feeling. It's rushing to act based on what you feel. This simple instruction carries a calling, a spiritual training, a vigilance that never takes a break, a quiet listening in the midst of the world's noise. Have you ever been through something like this? That situation where everything around you is screaming for a reaction, but deep down, something inside you whispers, stay silent, don't respond, trust, let go. And time, that silent judge, later shows you it was the best decision. If you had reacted, it would have made everything worse. If you had exploded, you would have burned bridges. If you had spoken too much, you would have regretted it. That's discernment. That's wisdom born of the Spirit. That's emotional and spiritual maturity. And here's something the spiritual realm knows and fears. The enemy cannot stand a heart at rest. Do you know why? Because he feeds on your anxiety. He thrives on your desperation. He grows when you lose control. But when you choose peace, when you become still, when you say, I trust God, even without understanding, he loses access. Because now, you're no longer trying to solve everything with your own strength. Now, you're handing the control to the one who truly reigns. And it's precisely in that moment that things begin to shift. Doors that were locked for years suddenly open without force. What was stuck begins to flow. invisible barriers start to break. Because when you step down from the throne of control, God stands up. Have you ever thought about how many times heaven wanted to act but found no room? Because you were trying to do everything on your own? How many times the promise was delayed because you let anxiety take the place of faith? How many answers were ready to arrive, but were pushed away by an impulsive reaction? You may not see it, but there is an invisible world watching every step you take. And every time you choose trust over reaction, you're declaring to heaven, I believe in the right timing. And heaven hears and responds. Napoleon Hill spoke about this when he emphasized the power of practical faith. A faith that is not just a feeling, but a conscious action. A faith that knows how to wait, knows how to hold back, knows how to act with purpose instead of impulse. This kind of faith doesn't run from the fight, but also doesn't surrender to urgency. And it's fully aligned with biblical wisdom. Because if you look closely, you'll see that the greatest characters in Scripture only experienced the fullness of the promise after they stopped reacting and started obeying. They understood. Not everything is solved with haste. Not everything is won through words. Not everything is conquered by force. Sometimes, the real power lies in trusting while you wait. And that is the key being placed in your hands right now. Let's remember someone who went through it all and chose to trust. Joseph of Egypt, betrayed by his own brothers, sold as a slave, forgotten in prison, ignored by those who promised to help him. How many times could he have given in to anger? How many chances did he have to shout, take revenge, or give up on everything? But he chose a different path. He chose to wait. He chose to trust. And because of that, at the right time, not his time, but God's time, he became the governor of an entire nation. God placed him on a throne. Because he didn't react like a slave, he acted like someone who already knew who he was, even while still in chains. And this is a truth you need to hold close. You never know what God is aligning behind the scenes while you wait. You don't see it, but he does. You don't understand it, but he's already written the end from the beginning. You don't control the timing, but he rules heaven and earth. Do you know what God is asking from you today? Just one thing: surrender. True surrender is not passive. It is active. It is a spiritual declaration of trust. So if this message is cutting through your defenses and touching your spirit, write now with faith, Lord, I trust in your timing. Write it not like someone quoting a nice phrase, but like someone making a spiritual stand. Like someone declaring to heaven and earth, I will no longer run ahead of God. Because listen closely, those who trust surrender, and those who truly surrender witness the impossible. You don't need to justify yourself to everyone. You don't need to respond to every criticism. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. Your peace is more valuable than your reputation. Your faith holds more power than any explanation. And your silence, when chosen with wisdom, speaks louder than any argument. So keep this truth like a shield. Anger pushes you toward error. Anxiety pulls you into dangerous shortcuts. But peace, true peace, leads you to the center of God's will. And maybe, just maybe, the door you've been waiting for is already unlocked. It's just on the other side of your calm. Breathe, surrender, trust, and prepare your spirit. Because in the next part of our journey, we'll talk about the most powerful stage of all: silent obedience. The kind that unlocks visible miracles and reveals why your emotional stability is one of the greatest spiritual weapons you possess. Have you ever stopped to reflect? How many times have you sabotaged yourself simply because you didn't know how to wait? The blessing was on its way. The answer was being delivered. What was yours already had a name and a set time. But in the middle of the process came fear, came doubt, came the urge to take control, came the temptation to cut corners, and it was in that very moment that everything fell apart. But today, right now, in this very moment, You are being reminded of something essential. Not everything that feels urgent is actually important, and the truly important things require a different posture. They require presence. They require peace. They require obedience. James 1:19 isn't in the Bible just to be memorized. That verse is a powerful spiritual key. It reveals the path that unlocks invisible doors. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Simple? Yes, but also deep, challenging, liberating. Napoleon Hill said it clearly. One of the most common causes of failure is the inability to control emotions. Now see how this aligns with the Bible. When you lose control, you also lose direction. When you rush, you fall into traps. When you lash out in anger, you destroy with your words what the Holy Spirit had been building in silence inside of you. Have you ever considered that your miracle might not be in the next thing you want to say, but in the next silence you are willing to keep? Do you want breakthrough? Do you want to move forward? Do you want to live something new with God? Then guard this in your heart. The miracle is often hidden in that step of faith you take even when you see nothing. In that hard decision not to react when everything in you screams for justice. In that choice to remain silent even when injustice cuts you deep. Because real obedience is not passive. It is strong. It is firm. It is a spiritual response that says, I trust, not just with my lips, but with my actions. You can say 1,000 times, I trust God. But if your actions betray your faith, it means nothing. Trust is not spoken. It's lived. It's acting as someone who has already seen the victory, even when all your eyes see is the desert. And do you know what God is looking for in you today? Not perfection, but willingness. Willingness to pause and listen before reacting. Willingness to take a deep breath before responding. Willingness to remain in peace when everything inside you wants to explode. That is true strength. Strength is not in those who strike back. It's in those who remain grounded. Not in those who win by yelling, but in those who conquer in silence. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the horrors of the Nazi concentration camps, wrote a sentence that reads like a prophecy for this generation. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Do you understand what he meant? That space is the field of your freedom. It's the place where you stop being reactive and become intentional. It's the soil where true spiritual maturity is born. What Frankl called space, the Bible calls wisdom, and Napoleon Hill calls self-control. It's there, between what wounded you and how you respond, that God begins to act on your behalf. So listen to this with all your heart. Heaven doesn't move through noise. Heaven moves in the silence of faith. And faith doesn't panic, doesn't justify itself, doesn't compete. Faith remains. Faith observes. Faith trusts without evidence. And while you choose this path, the path of surrender, of silence, of peaceful resistance, God is preparing what eyes have not seen, what ears have not heard, and what no heart has ever imagined. And when you remain, when you choose to trust even in silence, you begin to unlock the invisible. Doors that had been shut for years start to move. Miracles that once felt distant begin to draw near. Hearts that were in conflict begin to align. And the impossible, that impossible that's been chasing you, starts to look like just the next step in the promise. But all of this, every part of it, starts with one simple but powerful choice. The choice to listen more and speak less. The choice to trust more and get angry less. The choice to truly surrender your problems to God and not take them back 5 minutes later with doubt and anxiety. So let me ask you, with love, but also with firmness, are you truly willing to wait for something eternal? Or are you going to keep drowning in the urgency to fix everything your own way? Because what God has for you is not just anything. It's not scraps. It's not a temporary relief. It's a promise. It's a destiny. It's a legacy. But it also requires something from you: spiritual maturity. And maturity isn't earned through speeches. Maturity is built in silence. It's forged in waiting. It's proven in unseen obedience. If this message is stirring something in you, if something inside your spirit is awakening, then write this right now in the comments with living faith and a surrendered heart. Lord, teach me to remain. Don't write it like just another phrase. Write it like a vow, like a prayer, like a prophetic act sealing a new season over your life. Because words have power, and those who speak with faith move heaven. Don't underestimate what God can do with your surrender. Even if no one sees it, even if no one applauds it, even if you cry in the dark, the Bible is full of men and women who received everything after choosing to remain. Not by shouting, not by demanding, not by forcing, but by believing, by trusting, by standing firm while the world begged them to bow to fear. So calm your heart now, quiet your thoughts, let go of what's weighing you down, and prepare yourself. Because when you silence the flesh, the Spirit begins to speak. And when God speaks, He brings direction, He brings healing, He brings answers. But you will only hear it if you're willing to remain in the silence of faith. Because it's in that silence, the one few can bear, that God shouts His greatest victories.